Yes, hi, this is Chuck Shelton-Brand, and today's topic is building your file with mouse clicks only. So, to say the least, it's an important topic because we've talked for a couple of days about customizing your file. And normally that's a good thing to do before you start adding a bunch of records, but in any event, you can add records at any time and then customize later. But in any event, let's understand what this function is all about. Basically, we want to build a record like this using the candidate's resume. Somebody keyboarded all that stuff, name, address, and phones and stuff, and put a whole resume full of words together. We want to take that and basically steal all those keystrokes so we don't have to type anything. And what you're always looking for with software is payback for clicks, and so the topic of building your file with just your mouse, that's about payback for clicks. That's the whole idea. It's going to turn out that there are multiple ways to create database records. You can do them one at a time, which is what the second icon down in the stack. If I click this, it pops open a box that says automated data entry. We're going to come back to this in 2 seconds here. But what if I have a whole bunch of resumes? Well, the next icon down, click, says Express, Import, Express. That means Windows or Outlook. I can make records from a slew of, whether a folder, whether an Outlook folder, Windows folder, if I've got hundreds, up to 1,000 anyway, but typically people don't do 1,000, but there you can. You can convert a lot of resumes with mouse clicks only. So if you have an existing so-called backlog or inventory of resumes on your computer, hey, you can create searchable records with just your mouse and do big numbers at a time. And the other way that you'd create records in volume with just your mouse is to take a spreadsheet, like an Excel file, where every row in the Excel file, every row is describing, a person, first name, last name, title, company, whatever, phone, email. So you can build records from a spreadsheet with just your mouse. So whether you have a single resume, whether you have a bunch of resumes or a spreadsheet, you can create records with just your mouse. So let's start by clicking the second icon down, which says automated data entry. And there's tabs in here: Word doc, clipboard, file on disk, and email message. Email message, you have to have Outlook for that to appear, but if you have Outlook, you can use Outlook to create records. You don't need to save anything or just go straight to Outlook, bring the thing in. But let's start with, if I have an open Word doc. Now, I have one doc open on my other monitor that says March 2017 plan. I always have kind of a scratch pad and Word that I use, so that's not a resume. But if you have an open Word doc, and the idea is exactly that, often you open the resume, even if it was an email, with an attached resume, you might want to open it and take a look and see if you want to bring this person into the database. Make a gatekeeping decision. So open the thing up and take a look at it and decide, do I want to bother to put this record in my database? Most often you don't have any legal requirement to. If in some cases you can. If you're a large corporation and you post a job on your website, you may have an obligation for EEOC purposes to let everybody who applies into your database, so that you can then report for reporting for compliance reasons. But most of the time, most resume users, you were talking about, indeed, pop open a Word doc, take a look, and make a decision whether or not you want to bring this in. So that's what that's for. So the Word doc tab is not for docs that are just sitting on your hard drive. They're for open docs that you can see on your screen. The clipboard I just happen to have some stuff on my clipboard. But if you are on a website and you see a resume on a website, and that's all you're looking at your browser, and there's a resume, well, just drag your mouse down that browser and do Control C. That'll copy it to the clipboard, and then go to that clipboard tab, and it'll make a record from that which you copied off of a website. Let's go to File on Disk and say, now if you're on File on Disk, this button says Select File. If you're looking at another thing, it says Retrieve Message. So we'll go to File on Disk, and we're going to click Select File. Now, this is a Windows 7 machine, so that's what that looks like. It looks similar to that in Windows 10, but in any event, you can see your whole hard drive. I'm connected to a server. So this is, I'm looking at my F drive. It says up here in a folder called RESUMate and then a subfolder called Sample Resume. So you can browse any place on your computer and then go find something. This is not an open doc. This is a doc sitting actually a couple of doors down in our current location. So I can, the server is not with me, but I'm connected to the server, so I just pick something and I say, okay, and kaboom, I'm done already, but I want to stop for a bit. It says Save Attachment. I'm going to click Save, and I'll come back to that in a second. I just saved the original Word doc to the paper clip. That's going to turn out to be a handy thing to do. These are called attachments, and RESUMate has an attachment folder. I'll show you that stuff in just a minute. So anyway, here's my record. So the first point is I made a record, click, click. I normally say 5 clicks, 2 seconds because it's not a big deal. It's going to make a record quickly from a resume, in this case that was stored on the server in a folder called Sample Resumes. Let's look at a couple of things. First of all of my labels, all of the labels of my fields are blue underscore. They're links. So I can take, here's the idea. This resume graphically is simplistic. The first name and middle initial last name all on one line. An address, all on one. City, state, zip. This is a U.S. thing, obviously. So city, state, zip, one line. Phone number, one line. Email, one. Well, when you make it this easy, you know, software can use algorithms to find stuff based on logical extrapolations. If I have for USA or Canadian resumes, I can find a postal code. In our case, in US, it's a zip code. I can find that, and I know that everything kind of north of that is going to be the address and probably the name. Most resumes, the name is at the top. Resume formatting, however, is wildly different. Resumes outside the U.S. have very different formats, and that's okay. What these blue underscore things allow you to do is, even if we didn't find it correctly, because this one we found it all good. It says first name, middle initial, last name, address, boop-de-boo, city, email, phone. We found that stuff correct. But let's say we didn't find it correctly. This seminar says building your file with mouse clicks only. So I'm going to show, even if we didn't get it right, you can always grab your mouse and highlight something in the resume itself and click the field. Now that address 1 says Suite 301. And then I could come back over here and grab this and do address 2, click. So now this was fine, just reformatted that for no good reason, but I mean, you could be fixing incorrectly extracted things. And indeed, you know, this is not going to be perfect. Our extraction process is, I think, quite good. We get pretty high marks for it from customers, but it's not going to be perfect. And so you sometimes have to use this correction technique, but again, you're sticking with your mouse and you build a record. Now, what are we trying to get here? What's the whole point of this? It's nothing more than name, address, phones, and email. Oh, these words at the bottom, I care about those words. These all came from this resume. So here's my keyword list, the thing we talked about yesterday. And we found, we talked about this, we found QA manager. What we really found was quality assurance manager, right? We found a synonym, quality assurance manager. We found the synonym. We use that to mark the record. So all that this stuff is automatic coding based on the content of the resume. Now, name, that's all we try to find. Name, address, phone, email, extracted keywords, and I'm going to click Save, and the blue links will go away, click, and now they're all just normal black, but the dates popped in, so 3/8/2017. Now, what didn't we get? This is employer, previous. Why didn't we get that stuff? Well, because it's hard enough to find the name, address, and phones and email. If you tried to go into the resume and read this stuff and based on some algorithms or artificial intelligence try to find employer, no, you won't. Sometimes you might find it, but most of the time it's wrong. And few things are more irritating than when the computer anticipates or software anticipates what you want to do and does something for you. Word does that a fair amount of times. It expects that it knows based on your clicks what you're going to do, and no, you don't sometimes. I mean, and it's irritating if the computer or software makes mistakes. I have to fix the mistake. So we aren't trying in a completely error-prone employer, previous title, and also if you recall from Monday, you can custom change, you can make all these other things. So it would be really impossible to try to fill this in. However, if you wanted to fill this in, I'll show you something else. When I created this record, remember those blue links? Everything was links. Well, I can restore that. So if I click this little icon, it says Show Automated Data Entry Fields, click. Oh, my links came back. Well, if that's the case, I could come down here and grab something and click something and grab something else and click title. And I could come down here and click previous employer, and I could do that and click this. In other words, I can move data from the resume to the record, and I'm going to click save now because I made a lot of changes. And when I click save, the underscore goes away, but you can always restore it. Just come to this little icon that says ADE. It looks like ABC, but it's ADE as an automated data entry. Click, the links come back. Click it again, the links go away. It's just a toggle. So you can always come back, if you want a record in and you didn't correctly make the necessary corrections, possibly to the name, address, or phones portion, well, you can always come back and just click that icon and fix it later on. So in any event, it's pretty easy to create a record with just your mouse. So we did that from File on Disk. If I go back there, click, and this time say email message. Now you have to have Outlook for this to be the case. Retrieve message. Now I don't want that. I want to go to my sample resumes folder. Here's all of my Outlook folders. So you can pick any folder. It can be your inbox. It can be any folder that you have. And you can display, it will display the contents of that folder. Just like you do in Outlook, here's from, subject, date, and so on. Now, paper clips mean there's attachments to the message. So here's one, Jennifer here. There's no attachment. If I click that, I'm going to get a preview. This is just like Outlook. There's a preview pane underneath the list. So here, the resume is built into the actual body copy of the resume, and I could click OK, and I'd make a record from that. Well, just do it. I'll just click OK, and click OK, and here's a record, and save. I made a record from the body copy of an email. Well, let's go back there, and this time we'll choose a different person who has a paper clip, and I'm going to say OK. Now, a couple little options here. This is kind of neat stuff. It says the checkbox. Well, first of all, it shows you all of the attachments. Now, there's only one attachment, but let's say that the email message had multiple attachments, and you wanted to use all of them and link all of them, to the record. So it says select attachments to include, and this says save as attachments to the record. So if the resume had not just, if the message, had not just the resume, but a cover letter, maybe some work samples, who knows what, you can take all of that stuff and attach it to the paperclip. I'll come back to that in a second, I forgot. And then this is a neat little thing. It says ignore email body when attachments are imported. You can take that off, in which case the body copy of the email is going to appear in the memo called resume. But I'm going to go back and say, check. I want to ignore the email body. Most often, that's kind of the choice you'd prefer, because recruiters want to see resumes, want to build records from resumes. The body copy of an email normally is more noise than signal. So I'm going to say OK. And as quick as that, same thing. I got to go back and show you this paperclip thing. But here's my record. And we did the same thing. We found name, address, and phones. We found a whole bunch of words. We didn't fill this stuff in because we're not trying to. and click Save, and the dates pop in and so on. Now, I kept saying I would show you, with the paper clip in the upper left corner is a neat thing. Here is the doc that was used to create this record. I can open it, I can email it. It's not a critical function that resumes get attached to the paperclip, but it's a very useful function, and it's a default. All the settings are made so that when you set up RESUMate, it's going to automatically take any resumes that were used to create records and attach it to the page. If I click Open, it's going to open on my other screen. But here let's just click Send. I can send that email. I can send probably that attachment. Here, I'll just choose this and click. So here's an Outlook message with smithbrad.doc attached to the message. So now, what I was going to say is, it says add. You can have up to 10 external files. And often what you do is have a send-out copy. If you, in your normal business practice, want to remove contact information, you don't send the original resume, you send a copy of the resume with your logo, your stamp, something, and your recontact information. So just change the doc just as you would be doing today, but save it into the attachments folder, and then it's going to go, you can link it to the person's record. So now when you click that paperclip icon, you don't just see Smith Brad doc, you see Smith Brad send out doc or something. You give it a different name, whatever you wanted to call it, but you can have multiple attachments up to 10 on the paperclip. Having said that, let's finish that topic out. I'm going to click the word Tools up at the top. Go down to Options. And in the Options dialog box, I'm going to click the tab that says Data, D-A-T-A, Data, click. This is an important tab. Among other things, it says Set Attachment Folder. It says, set your main database file, select your calendar file, set your attachments folder. If you're in a network, you want every computer on the network to be click. You want to have that all pointing to, in this case, my attachment. I think mine might be on my C drive, actually. No, it's on my network. So the point is, you want everybody, RESUMate creates a folder called Attachments automatically. If you installed RESUMate, there's a folder called Attachments. And if you set it up as a network, then the Attachments folder will be on the network server. If you set it up as a single user, the Attachments folder is on your C drive, but mine is on my F drive, it says. So anyway, use this. Set your attachments folder to be the same for all participants in the database so that when somebody clicks, this happens a lot of times, people click on the paperclip and it says file not found. Oh, what's that about? You got to go browse to find it. Well, you can. If you click add, you can browse to find it, but don't go browsing around on people's C drives. Have your attachments folder set to the server, and then everybody's attachments all go to the same place. Now, let's go back to the guy that I always use here. There's a history tab. By the way, in the menu line across the top, there's a thing called history. And that shows you the last 20 records that were ever on your screen. And I'm going to go grab that guy that I just had a minute ago. That's useful because sorry about that. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just found him. I don't know why I didn't. And it didn't. That's not a good thing. Let's try this way. Yeah, we're back to the history thing. I don't know why that didn't work. It's reliable. It'll work. It didn't work for me, but it's a good way to use to see the last 20. The reason you want to have this is that if you're working on a record, the phone rings, and you start talking to somebody else, and it's a long phone call, and when you're done with the call, you say, what was I doing before I took this call? The history tab, the history menu item will show you the last 20 records, and you can kind of get back to where you were. Now, okay, so putting records in from your mouse is, let's go to Import Express. Keep an eye on the clock here. Import Express allows me Windows Outlook. So no matter what you choose, if I choose Windows, number 2 says Select Files. If I choose Outlook, it says Select Messages. So for no good reason, we'll choose Select Files. This allows me, I can browse any place. I'm in a folder called sample resumes on my desktop, and if I click, if I do click and shift click, I can define a range, right, and say, okay. So now, whatever I've selected appears as a list in step 8. But I've got some housekeeping stuff that I want to do. Very neat stuff, worth paying attention. It's a very simple process, actually. So I selected fields. So now I selected files. Step 3 says, well, do you want to copy the date the file was created to the entered date field? This is in RESUMate. One of my 6 date fields is date entered. What this little step 3 allows me to do is take the file creation date for the file, for the Word docs. These are typically Word docs. It can be PDFs, either one. But when files are created, they get a time and date stamp built into it, and automatically you don't need to do anything. If you're bringing in a whole bunch of resumes from past years, well, it might be smart not to have the date entered show as March the 8th of 2017, because that would imply that this data is up to speed and fresh, but no, it's 5 years old. Take the file creation date for the original file and use that as date entered. So that's what this is for. It's just a smart way to kind of keep RESUMate consistent so that the date entered actually shows how old the data is that was used to build this record. You can save as attachments. You'd want to do this. You'd want to take all these items and stick them in your attachments folder. Today, I think I would uncheck. I would not have this box checked. We used to have a thing that required a question mark symbol to appear prior to the first character of the last name, because we wanted to mark the records so that you could come back to them and do editing at some future time, and you wanted to have a marker right on the screen itself that a record has never been edited by a human being. When you make records using the one-at-a-time deal, you're going to sort of automatically do editing and say, well, that doesn't look right, and you'll fix things. Well, if you bring in 1,000 records in, no, we're not stopping. We're going to go all the way through 1,000. Now they're all in the database. And once they're in the database, well, how would you go back and find them to do editing? We used to stick a question mark. I tend to leave that blank these days. This is something that you typically don't want to do, but you can move if you're trying to kind of drain the swamp. You drain the folder and put them into a done, to go from the original folder to a done folder. You can do that. I don't think that's that critical. But step 7, automatic groups assignment. I can take all of these records and put them into a group. We'll talk about groups later. But this is a very smart thing to do. You can just check that box, go find a group, stick them all in that group. It's a very slick thing. This is all simple mechanical stuff. I'm going to close this out for time reasons at the moment, but you can bring big numbers of things in at a time. So I'm going to say X to that. Now, what about the situation where you're creating a record, but you don't have a resume? This is a very common thing. Somebody says, hey, you should call Mary Smith, and here's a phone number. That's all you have is a first name, last name, phone number. In that case, use the very top icon. So this is create one record at a time automatically. This is create up to 1,000 at a time automatically. But this just says new, NEW new. If I create a record, which is hard to do, single finger typing. Why am I doing this here? Mary Smith. And I say save. And I put a phone number or an email address and say save. She's already here, and I'll say no. It detected that she's already been in from a previous seminar, so it does always detect, by the way, if you add any records, now not import express, if you add records one at a time, we can detect that the record pre-exists in the database. Import express does not stop. It keeps on going, so it's another story altogether. Let's just do this, though. Here's Mary Smith. I made a record. And she says, yeah, I'll send the resume. And my gosh, she sends the resume. I can come to the, this is empty, right? There is no resume. I just had her phone number and whatever. If I click resume and click this icon, replace memo, click. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure it's empty. I want to fill it with something good. Notice this doesn't say automated data entry. It says new memo. But it's got the same stuff, the same tabs. So if I got it open on my screen, I could use that. If it's on the clipboard, I could use that. File on disk, I could select the file, and we'll put this person, just pretend that that's Mary Smith, and say OK. And now I'm going to put her in the attachments folder. Well, here's the resume. And so now I've got the resume from my skeletal record. And if I want to have this scanned to look for things that match my keyword list, just come here, auto scan record, click. Now this fills in. So even if you don't have a resume, that's okay. You can add the resume later, and it'll have the same effect. You can read the resume and attempt to fill your table in. In fact, I think you could even do this. If I click this icon, auto scan, click. Now it grabbed the address. It grabbed all this stuff and filled that in. So I'll click save. I'll kill this when we're done. But in any event, you can create records where you start with your keyboard, but you bring the resume in later, and it will still automatically fill. The thing, I'm only going to be able to mention that this exists because this is a separate seminar, but if I want to bring stuff in from a spreadsheet, all I want to say today is that that's fine. You can. File, database, tools, and it's 2 weeks from today we do this in detail. File, database, tools, import wizard, click. Here's this wizard function that allows you to find a file and go. Where have I got some files here? It's they're on my desktop. I could find a file and bring that file in. So here's a file. This is a wizard function. Just click next, next, next. This is all documented at the website. I could show you where to go to the training page. If you need to know this before we talk about this 2 weeks from today, the detail behind this is at the website on the training page, or shoot me an email and I'll send you the link. You can go straight to it. But for the moment, I just want to say that you can bring spreadsheets into the database. So the whole idea here is to say you can bring records. You build your file with just your mouse. You do not need to type. And if you do need, because you don't have a resume, then you got to type the first name, last name, and an email address. But from that point on, if you get the resume, you can then fill in all the missing stuff. So building your file is simple stuff. Now, let me quickly look at some notes here if I didn't overlook something important. Maybe one quick thing here. When I brought records in, notice that my initials appeared automatically. So if you want to have assignment of a candidate to a recruiter or a client or a job order, do the following here. If there's more than just you, if it's just you, this not too important to do this, but if you go to File, Database, Tools, and a thing called Recruiter Maintenance, click. Here, I've got, these are all pretend fake names or initials, but you can put 3 initials. And so you'd have all the people who participate in this database initials lined up here. So File, Database, Tools, Recruiter Maintenance. Then go to each person's computer, like your own, and click Tools, Options, and then the tab called General. Click. Set Default Recruiter. Click. Here's all those recruiters. Pick yourself out of the list, select, save. From that point on, records that are created by any person, whether it's a candidate record, a client record, or a job order record, automatically pick up that person's initials. And from that point on, you can then tailor lots of other things. The daily planner can be targeted to just one person. You can just see your plan. You don't need other people's plans. There's good reasons to have that recruiter field automatic. Now we're slightly past time, so I'm going to quit, and let's look for questions here. All right. What is the best way to import and build a database from resumes? I'm trying to rebuild my database and have 30,000 resumes in a folder. Query import express and point to that folder the resume gets on. Yeah, don't do 30,000. You should certainly be able to do, we say 1,000 at a time. And I would suggest don't even go, if you're trying it for the first time, do 50. Once you see how it works, once you kind of have this screen kind of figured out, and there's some housekeeping stuff, and this is thoughtful. You got to use your head, take your time and do that, but don't do thousands at a time. Actually, the truth is it can go more than 1,000. With Outlook, it's only I think there is actually a hard number in Outlook that limits it to 1,000. But I think Word docs could go higher. But don't do it in small chunks. Once you get it figured out, you just keep going. Then get all 30,000 in your database. So I think that should work. If you get stuck, you shoot me an email, and I'll help you with that. Okay, I think we're good to go. This is the last session for this week. We start again next Monday. Monday will be on searching, so I won't send the invitation for the Monday session till Friday. I always send it the business day prior. So thanks for attending, and if you think of other questions, give me an email or give me a call. Thanks.